Okay, so let's start. Welcome everyone to the webinar, and thanks Richmond for supporting the webinar as well. My name is Iñigo Casis, and I'm the Director of Studies of London School of Languages and also a CELTA tutor. And today we will be speaking about preparing students for exam speaking, okay? And what are we going to see today? Well, first of all, we will look at what makes a good speaker, okay? And then I will focus a little bit on what makes particularly a good exam speaker, because it's not exactly the same. Then we will look at ways of developing the speaking skill in class, what language students need to know, then how we can increase students' fluency, and then at the end, I will give you 10 for questions if you have any. Okay, so the first thing, what makes a good speaker? And that's a question for you. What makes a good speaker? Okay. Yeah, okay, like Ursula says, able to communicate, okay? So yeah, absolutely. I would say that the feature that makes a speaker good is particularly that they are able to communicate well, okay? But is this the case with exam speakers? And I would say no, and we will see why. What makes a good exam speaker? Well, let's look a little bit at what Cambridge is looking for in a B2 at B2 level from somebody doing the test. Okay, so for example, if we look at band 3, we see that they need to show a good degree of control of simple grammatical forms and attempt some complex grammatical forms. Then they have to produce these extended stretches of language despite some hesitation, and contributions need to be relevant, and there is very little repetition as well, okay? So we will focus on that a little bit later, but they need to, in a way, sound fluent, okay? Pronunciation has to be intelligible. That's the most important thing. They have to be easy to understand. And then they initiate and respond appropriately, and they can keep on going, so to say, okay? So what makes a good exam speaker? Well, very simply, somebody who is at band 3 or above, okay? That's what Cambridge thinks is a good exam speaker. So as you see, it's not necessarily the same as a good speaker in real life. So looking at that assessment criteria Cambridge uses, what makes a good exam speaker? Well, first of all, doesn't make basic grammar mistakes, okay? That's a very important thing at any level, okay? The basic grammar has to be there and has to be okay. I mean, if you make basic mistakes, that's always a pretty bad thing, okay? So doesn't make basic grammar mistakes. Uses some complex grammatical forms. If you noticed in band 3, they need to attempt the use of these complex grammatical forms. And if they want to be at the higher grade, then they have to use some complex grammatical forms correctly, okay? So using some grammatical forms. Using a wide range of vocabulary, okay? So they need to know this, okay? So it's not enough to say this thing here and so on. So they need to know the specific vocabulary related to the topics they are talking about. So a wide range of vocabulary. Gives extended answers. I mean, there's nothing worse than a candidate answering yes or no, and that's it, okay? So the impression they make is not very good. So always make sure that they give extended answers, always make sure that they go beyond just one phrase, okay? So they really need to be aware that they need to speak. Produces interesting ideas. I mean, this is an important thing as well. It's not only about saying simple things, but it's also about trying to go beyond the simple. It's trying to show that apart from knowing how to say things, you have interesting things to say. Uses a variety of linkers, so beyond these and, but, so, etc. Okay, so they use nevertheless, although, and so on. Okay, so it's very important that they show that they have some control of a variety of linkers and linking devices. Individual sounds are clearly pronounced. I think this is the most important bit of the pronunciation. Okay, intonation is important as well, and how you sound is important, but sounds, individual sounds need to be clearly pronounced, right? And the other thing is, a good candidate is somebody who doesn't sound flat. I mean, it's terrible when you hear in class somebody like being boring, flat, and so on. So they need to use the proper intonation, and they need to make an effort, let's say, to sound, as I said before, interesting, and for that they shouldn't sound flat. Initiates conversations, so they are not passive, all right? One of the things they need to do from time to time, not all the time, okay? They shouldn't be dominating either, but it's initiate the conversations from time to time. And very important, listen to their partner. I always say that as well as being a speaking test, this is, it has a listening part, in the sense that they really need to listen to what the partners say, and they need to link this, what they say, to what the partners say. So they need to show that they are listening, and they need to be able to follow up on what the other person is saying. So very important to listen actively and to follow up on what the other candidate is saying. Okay, I don't know to what extent you are familiar with the B2, the first certificate test. If you can answer in the chat. Okay, yeah, so you are pretty familiar with this, right? Okay, that's fine. Then I won't spend too much time here. I mean, this is the form it takes. Okay, so they have a conversation at the beginning, then individual long term where they have to speak about a picture for a minute, or in this case, 2 pictures for a minute. Then a conversation between the candidates, and in the end, a discussion about the topic. And it takes this form, okay? So as you see here, you have the instructions for the 2 photographs. They need to speak about that. Then they have 2 minutes to discuss topics and 1 minute to decide on something else. And then here in part 4, as you see, they have these questions on the topic, okay? Right. So bearing all that in mind, bearing that format in mind, how can we develop the speaking skill in class? And here I will follow what Scott Thornbury described as a 3-step method, as it were. So the 3 steps, or the 3 things that should be present in class every time you are teaching speaking, and of course, speaking for exams. And the first one is awareness raising, okay? So in the classroom, we need to find ways of raising students' awareness about features of speaking. By features of speaking, I mean how we develop a conversation in English, or how certain things are said, how people interact together, and so on. So how can we do this? How can we raise students' awareness about these features of speaking? Well, a very important thing we can do is we can get them to listen to recordings. So conversations between proficient speakers or talks and so on. And then, of course, we need to remember that the main source of language in the classroom is us, it's the teachers. So again, we need to make students notice how we say things and again, how we perform certain aspects or certain features of speaking. Also very important, they need to notice the gap between what they know and what a proficient speaker can do. And so to try in a way to fill that gap. And how can we do this? Okay, a very easy way is students can perform a task and then with the ability they have, okay? So with the tools they have, with the language they have, they just perform the task. And after that, students can observe proficient speakers performing the same task. Okay, so after students observe proficient speakers doing that, what they do is they try to incorporate all the language they noticed when they observe these proficient speakers performing the same task, and then they do it again, okay, but trying to incorporate all that language. Right. Okay, so one activity we can do to help students raise their awareness is this one. So I'm sure you are familiar with TED Talks, and I must say it's a brilliant tool for teaching. Okay, it's you can find talks about any topic you can think of. Okay, it's a great thing, and and it's great to, let's say, give students some ideas to use in class. So I've chosen this one. I'm sure you know this man over here, and Bill Gates. Okay, and again anticipating things. Okay, like he did before. And this talk is about the innovations we need to avoid a climate disaster. Okay. So the first thing we do in class is we run this as a normal listening. So they watch the video. We can give them, we can give the students some comprehension questions, and they watch it. They answer these comprehension questions and so on, and they complete some questions we can give them. All right. Once they watch this video, what they can do is we give them, as you see, sorry. So we give them this mind map. As you see, this is some kind of part 3 of the exam of B2, where, as we said before, they have to speak about the topic for 2 minutes and then reach an agreement in 1 minute. Okay, so what we do is we get them to get some ideas from the talk, and they put them here. In this case, as you see, what we have is the title of the talk, and we turn it into a question. What innovations do we need to avoid a climate disaster? As you see, this question is very similar to the questions they will get in this part 3, okay? And then they write these 5 ideas. They can do this in pairs. All right, once they have these ideas, they can swap their mind maps, okay? Because possibly they will come up with different ideas, and it's good to get that variety in class as well. So they can swap this mind map and then have this conversation with their partners, okay? And after that, after they have this conversation, they go back to the video and they watch the relevant parts again, and they notice how, in this case, Bill Gates expresses those ideas, they notice what chunks of language he uses and what vocabulary he uses to talk about that. So a very useful activity indeed, okay? And as you see, very little preparation is needed here. I mean, the only thing you need to do is you need to find an interesting TED Talk, and as I say, that's an easy thing to do because there are thousands of talks, and prepare some comprehension questions, and then give them this mind map. The rest, students will do it, okay? So you just need to give them feedback and try to expand their vocabulary of the topic a little bit, okay? Of course, you can get the students to choose the talk they want to have in class, okay? So a very nice activity. Okay, the next step after we raise their awareness is appropriation, okay? And Scott Thornbury calls this practice control, okay, as opposed to controlled practice, which is the expression we usually use. And it's an interesting twist, let's say, because we practice that kind of controlled activity, so to say, okay? And well, this involves demonstrating progressive control of a skill, but of course, with the possibility of making mistakes. That's fine, okay? It's always good, but it doesn't matter because we, as teachers, we will give them the support they need, and that support will always be at hand. This support can take the form of, for example, a model which is drilled. So we give them a sentence and we drill it, they repeat it, and we correct, okay? So like that, that's controlled and they practice it. Reading aloud from a text, I mean, it's a bit controversial because when I see a teacher making the students read aloud, I always think, okay, this is not very useful. I mean, why are they doing that, right? And in this case, I would say that unless there is a clear purpose, this is not useful. But if there is a clear purpose, it's incredibly useful. And for example, we might get them to read something with the right intonation, and we can correct that as they do it. Another very important thing is the teacher reformulating what students say. And in this case, if a student says something that is wrong, we reformulate it correctly, or even if it's correct, we might want to reformulate it to make it better, okay? Or sound more natural. This is how you say it in English. This is how you say it naturally, so to say. A very important thing, memorized and rehearsed dialogues. It's when we speak, let's say, we try to use all those chunks of language we already know. And I'm sure that you sometimes you use expressions you heard in a film or in a song and so on, and you use them as they are. So the more bits of dialogues they know or they memorize, the better, because they will have that on the exam day. And I will repeat this during this talk, but an exam is not a situation when you really want to start thinking, okay? So the more automatic the processes are in an exam, the better, okay? More fluent, and they, of course, they will produce language that is better and more complex. So not the time to think, okay? Is the when you really need to use all that you have memorized. And then repetition of tasks, of course, okay? So repeating tasks is incredibly useful, always with a little change every time they repeat it, but repeating improves their fluency and it improves the quality of their speaking. Okay, so how can we reduce this support little by little? Well, one thing we can do is remove the model, okay, so that students have to rely on memory, okay, so we remove it little by little, and later on we will see an activity in which we do this. Then you can reduce planning time and you can limit the time they have to perform the task. So the point is that you can give them some time at the beginning, and then little by little you give them less time to do exactly the same thing. Okay, as they are practicing, they will be able to do that. Right, an activity to practice this practice control, as Scott Thornbury calls it, okay? So it's a discussion bingo. And what is this about? Well, they can work, for example, in groups of 3, or you choose, okay? But if you give them 3 cards, you have groups of 3, and you give each student one of these bingo cards, okay? So you give one student card 1, another one card 2, another one card 3. And as you see, they have different expressions, okay? So for example, talking of, it seems that, frankly, I really do wish, if only, you must bear in mind, and so on, okay? And what they do is they choose a topic from the box you have here, for example, and COVID-19 has to be there all the time, I guess. And as you are, or they just start a discussion on the topic they want. So as they are speaking, what they have to do is they have to use all the expressions they have on their bingo cards. So what are they doing? What they are doing is they are trying to incorporate as many expressions as they can, okay? Which is, in a way, what they do in the exam. So they try to incorporate that, and they try to use as many, to show that they know as many expressions as they can. Okay, each time they use one, they tick it or they cross it off. And then when they have used all the expressions, they shout bingo, okay? And then they can repeat this. Again, it's about using as many expressions as they can, which is what they have to do in the exam as well. So they need to be able to produce all these expressions as naturally as they can. All right, so the last step would be autonomy, okay? So this is when you don't need help and you don't need to get anyone giving you the words, the expressions, and so on. And this is partly due to the increased automaticity of the language production, okay? Is your fluency. So, I mean, when you feel fluent, and this happens very often, okay? So it's like, oh, I see I'm able to speak fluently. I'm able to speak at a certain speed, so to say, okay? And this is the last step, as we see, of this 3-step process. Classroom activities that require a degree of autonomy. So, for example, giving presentations, students can prepare a presentation and they can give it. Talking about pictures for a limited time. Okay, so this is part 2, obviously, of the test, and they can just speak about the picture for a minute, and for that, obviously, they need to be autonomous. Then role plays and simulations, and this might be something that can include speaking part 3, discussions and debates for part 3 and part 4, and finally conversations and chats. And yeah, I mean, Ursula says controversial topics work with discussions. Okay, yeah, I completely agree. If the topic is controversial, obviously they will be more willing to speak, and they will produce, of course, more speaking. Okay. Right, and an activity we can use for this is giving them conversation cards. So, for example, you give them 10 or 15 conversation cards, and in groups, they take one and they speak about that for a couple of minutes, for example. When they finish, they take another one and they speak about that for 2 more minutes, and so on until they use the 15 cards, 10, 15 cards they have. I mean, choose the topics, but topics should be, as Ursula was saying, something controversial, okay, to get them speaking. So to say, for example, it's never okay to wear leggings as trousers, or the government should introduce a higher tax on sugary and high-fat food, or, for example, my favorite one, smartphones are making us stupid, okay? So again, get them to speak, and then very importantly, at the end, you give them feedback on their performance, and then they can do it again, okay? So this is a good moment to introduce task repetition. Right. Okay, so moving on to what language do learners need to know? Okay, because this is not something that easy sometimes to know, right? I mean, because as we will see now in the assessment criteria again from Cambridge for a B2, for example, to be band 3, they need to show a good degree of control of simple grammatical forms and attempt some complex grammatical forms and use a range of appropriate vocabulary. To be band 5, they need a range of simple and grammatical forms, but complex grammatical forms, but they need to use them well, let's say, okay? So, but then again, now the question is, what's a complex grammatical form? What's a simple grammatical form? And okay, so let's see these definitions. And simple grammatical forms are words, phrases, basic tenses, and simple clauses. Okay, so as you see, short things, as it were. So words, short phrases, and so on. So as opposed to that, what's complex grammatical forms? Well, it's longer, and this is the key, okay, longer and more complex utterances. So what they say is not just a phrase, it's 2 or 3 phrases linked in some way, okay? So they can have noun phrases, relative and adverb clauses as well, okay? And passive forms is considered complex language, for example, at B2, of course, okay? So again, as you see, it's going beyond 1 or 2 phrases, and it's linking them properly. Okay, so, but now the question is, how do I know whether an expression or a word or some grammar is more B2, is more C1, is more B1, is it complex for B2, and so on. I don't know how familiar you are with this English grammar profile. Okay. Okay, so so you don't know it. Okay, great. You will like this one. It's a fantastic tool. Well, the English grammar profile, what they do is this. Okay, so they say grammatical forms often have more than one meaning, and for example, the modal verb may can be used with various meanings at different levels. So the English grammar profile, what they do is, or what it does, is they teases apart these meanings and tells us at which level we see learners of English using them correctly and appropriately. So, for example, may, okay, the modal verb may. A2, at A2, students are expected to use it for weak possibility. So the weather may be hot, okay? At B1, okay, so they are expected to do that, plus formal permission, okay? May I borrow your bike? But as you see, they are not expected to do that at A2. At B2, they should be able to use may well, and like in you may well find that this is not the case. And at C1, they are expected to use may as well, like in we may as well go home, okay? So as you see, at each level, they are expected to do, or to be able to do different things. Here at the bottom, you have these, the address for the English profile, but if you just Google English profile, you will see it. And yeah, no, it's a great tool. Yeah, I know. It's a fantastic thing because it really tells you whether a piece of language is suitable for one level or not, okay? And let's look at a couple of examples. So for example, adjectives, and we combine, okay, adjectives and nouns, for example. So at B2, they are expected to use well phrases modifying nouns, okay? So they can use adjective phrases to modify nouns. But at C1, they are expected to use a wide range of compound adjectives, so like open-minded, above mentioned, well-to-do, jaw-dropping, and so on, which, as you see, in principle, is not very difficult to learn, but if you use that at B2, they will make a very good impression, okay? So again, for example, these phrase modifying nouns for B2 would be these small and exotic island, whereas the compound adjectives might be something like, I would describe myself as an easygoing and open-minded person, okay? So for example, useful for part one of the first certificate exam. So instead of saying just one adjective of a noun and a noun, you can say, okay, I would describe myself as an easygoing person, okay? And again, you make a good impression. Another example, so using superlatives at B2, well, they are expected to use superlative adjectives before noun plus to an infinitive, like in we need to be updated, and the easiest way to do it is to use computers, okay? The easiest way to do it. So they are expected to do that at B2. Whereas C1, for example, they are expected to produce things like to increase sales of the new model to the highest possible level. So you have the superlative, the highest, and then you have adjective possible, and then the noun level, okay? So again, like that, you can give a student language that is a bit more complex, but as you see, not very difficult to use, okay? And again, that will make a good impression. In discussions, very often we see that they tend to use language that is a bit simple, even for easy things like agreeing, disagreeing, and so on. And something we need to do is we need to give them a collection of expressions to express strong agreement, a strong disagreement, and all these shades of opinion in between, okay? So you can put them on posters, okay, around the room, and they can look at them all the time. So again, as I always say, it's a language-rich environment, okay? So they look at that all the time. Important things here. I mean, expressing an opinion, right? That the typical, I think they can use if you ask me, if you want my opinion, and so on. And strong agreement, instead of saying, yes, I agree, or I am agree, don't say that, please, okay? You can say, I couldn't agree more, or just absolutely, okay, which sounds even more natural. An important thing, we said before that listening is very important, okay? And for that, what we can do is use these expressions for hedging, like, I take your point, but yes, but, and so on, okay? So again, you are showing that you are listening, and you are showing that you are expanding on your partner's answers. Right. So as we mentioned before, this autonomy is about sounding fluent in a way as well. Okay. A very important thing is sounding fluent in a way. It's something you feel, so to say. Okay. It's not something maybe you can pinpoint, like saying, okay, no, you sound fluent because of this and this. It's more a feeling, I would say, than anything else. So a very important thing, and how can we increase students' fluency in the classroom? Okay, so looking at the assessment criteria again from Cambridge, and this time I will focus on Band 5. Okay, so I think maybe language it's a bit more difficult to access that Band 5 in the sense of grammar and vocabulary, but I think discourse management, pronunciation, and interactive communication are a bit easier to be nearer that Band 5. And so, for example, for discourse management, what do they ask for? They ask for this: produces extended stretches of language with very little hesitation. So again, you see, they ask you to sound fluent, okay? And pronunciation as well. Of course, intelligible and intonation is appropriate, but sentence and word stress is accurately placed. So again, which means that you have certain intonation that you place the stress where you should be placing it, and that makes you sound fluent, as we were saying. So how can we do that? How can help students develop their fluency? And first of all, I will give you a couple of examples. And you can, for example, pre-teach key vocabulary. You can brainstorm ideas before any discussion. What else? So I'll give you 20 seconds to write your ideas in the chat. Okay. All right. So let's see some of the ideas. So as we said, I mean, one thing we can do, obviously, is pre-teach key vocabulary. Okay, we can give them that. And if they don't need to think about that vocabulary, that will make them sound more fluent. Brainstorm ideas before any discussion, okay? Again, as we said at the beginning, you need to produce interesting ideas, okay? And one way of helping students is giving them these ideas, and of course, little by little, removing that support and getting them to produce those ideas, okay? But it might be a good idea to brainstorm those before any discussion. A tip here, okay? So students often contribute more in small groups. So get students in groups of no more than 4 people, okay? Because I mean, if there are more people, and well, now in this situation, it's a bit more difficult to get that. But obviously, if students are in bigger groups, you have fewer opportunities to contribute. You have fewer opportunities to talk as well. And the shy student will hide more easily in a big group, okay? So my recommendation in this case is that you use small groups for speaking in class. As we were saying before, pre-teach any language needed for a speaking activity, and prepare it and practice it thoroughly. Very important, when you teach expressions for speaking, it's important to work on the natural pronunciation of the phrase, okay? Because if they can pronounce it correctly and they don't need to think very much about pronunciation, they will sound faster, and there will be fewer silent pauses, okay? Which again, in an exam is very important, okay? If you stop for too long, that won't look good. Okay, so if they know how to pronounce this and they automatically are able to produce this, they will have fewer silent pauses. In some activities, prioritize fluency over accuracy and don't correct the students' mistakes unless there is a communication breakdown. Okay. Provide materials that can be used as a springboard for discussion, texts on topics to be discussed. And like Ursula said before, possibly if the topics are a bit controversial, that will produce more speaking. Try to convince the learners of the value of trying to express themselves beyond their apparent linguistic limits, okay? Encouraging them to accept that mistakes are inevitable. Remember, in Band 3, for language and vocabulary, they need to attempt complex language, okay? They are not saying that they need to get it right at first certificate, obviously, all the time, okay? At higher levels, they expect them to produce it correctly. But again, it's important to encourage them to try and use expressions that are a bit beyond their level, okay? And in a way, the classroom is a safe environment to do that, so we should always promote that. A very useful activity, analyze a clip of proficient speakers involved in discussion, as we saw in the activity with Bill Gates, asking learners to pay attention to the speed and pitch of speech, body movements and gestures. So it's raising their awareness, as we saw at the beginning, okay? So then get them to imitate the speaker. Analyzing a clip of a proficient speaker will raise their awareness, as I said, for example, of the language chunks they use to communicate fluently, okay? As I said before, memorizing, and this word is key, memorizing chunks will help the students to become more fluent, and it will increase the confidence when they speak. Again, an exam is not the moment to doubt and think about what language you are going to use, okay? It's the time when you need to use all those memorized chunks and automatic language you already have, okay? This website I include here, this is fantastic. It's a fantastic website, es.uglish.com. There you can write any expression you want, and it will give you a YouTube clip with somebody saying that, okay, from film, series, and so on. And it's great because you can even choose the accent. You might prefer an American speaker saying that, or a British speaker, or an Australian speaker saying that. And it's fantastic because sometimes we don't have models of expressions we want to teach in the books, for example. But in this website, you can type it, and you will get, as I say, that proficient speaker saying that expression. It is a fantastic website. Okay, as we said before, memory in this case is key. Okay, so I don't know if you are familiar with this book, Memory Activities for Language Learning, but it's a very good book. And again, it shows you the importance of memorizing in class. Okay, something I think we tend to neglect nowadays. Okay, the memorization of some expressions. So learners need to be able to use ready-made expressions in order to sound fluent at any levels. So at any level, sorry. This means that the teacher needs to provide learners with strategies to memorize those expressions and get them to use them in meaningful communicative activities. So a well-trained working memory can help learners to develop in fluency. Very important, again, the more chunks they memorize, the better speakers they will be, and they will obviously sound more fluent and more natural. So how can we help students memorize chunks of language? Well, one thing we can do is make the material we use in class relevant, personal, and engaging. Okay, so if a student can relate to the material personally, they will remember that much more easily. And if it's engaging, again, if I'm engaged in a conversation and so on, I will remember that much more easily. Get learners to notice expressions in different contexts. So, for example, they can notice one expression in a listening, and then they can notice the same expression in a text, okay? So like that, they will get this variety of context that will help them quite a lot. Get learners to retrieve whole expressions from time to time. So as we said, it's the more they use it, the more they will remember it, okay? Those chunks of language they know, they need to use them, all right? If they don't use them, they will forget them. So from time to time, get them to use that. I don't know if you are fans of chants, but they are very useful. And it's like when we remember words or phrases from songs, because they have music and they have a rhythm, okay? So chants will help us with that, with the rhythm and with the music, and it will make it more memorable, okay? And also because of the inner repetition of the chants. As I said before, create language-rich environments in class, for example, by putting posters with word groups on the walls so they can look at that all the time and they can refer to that all the time. Use workers with L1, L2 matches, so they look at that, then they look at the match, and it's very easy, okay? They can even have it on the mobile phone. I mean, nowadays there are a lot of apps to do that, okay? And whenever they are on the bus or something, they can from time to time look at that and try to remember it. Get learners to learn 2 or 3 expressions by heart for homework. I mean, why not? So tell them for tomorrow, you need to learn these 3 expressions, okay? And the following week, you give them 3 more expressions, and like that, you help them build this repertoire of ready-made expressions they can use, okay, and memorize. So in memorizing 3 expressions for each class is a great thing. I mean, think about how many expressions they will have memorized by the end of the academic year, okay? And then using activities such as broken telephone can be useful as well. Okay, a little activity for you, right? We don't have time because we are running out of time now, but this is something you can do with your students, right? I mean, you can help them memorize doing this activity. You give them 6 phrases and you give them 1 minute to memorize that, okay? So in 1 minute, they memorize as much as they can, but don't give them more time, okay? Just 1 minute. I was going to say it's enough. Of course it isn't, okay? They won't memorize the 6 phrases at all, but you will see very interesting things. I mean, you will see whether they remember more language from the beginning, from the end, or the middle sentences and so on. And you will see that you will reach very interesting conclusions in class, okay? And then it's good to draw their attention to the kind of words they remember, the kind of words they tend to forget as well, okay? To pay a little bit more attention to those words the next time you do that, okay? So as I say, a very good activity to raise their awareness of as well of how much they can remember. Okay, this was the time I was going to give you, but we will continue. So a very interesting thing. According to research, in order to use working memory as opposed to this echoic memory, which we use to remember just a few words, typically the last ones we hear in an utterance, a phrase needs to have at least 7 or 8 words, okay? So this means that we need to drill phrases rather than words, okay? Because they will remember that in their working memory, okay? Not just this immediate memory, they can repeat it now, but possibly they will forget it later. But if a word of an expression is in a phrase and you drill it and you repeat it, it's easier to memorize in the long term, let's say, okay, to store it in their working memory. So this means that drilling chunks of language will help students to memorize them and therefore use them much more fluently. So again, drill phrases, don't just drill words or short phrases. Okay, so an activity to do this. So vanishing texts, okay? I don't know if you are familiar with this activity, but it's a great activity. I mean, what do we have to do? Students choose a phrase from a text they have on the board, and using the reverse drilling technique, so starting from the end to the beginning, you drill the phrases in the text, okay? So like that, you help them pronounce the words and get a little bit familiar with those phrases. Then, for the next drilling, what you do is you erase, for example, function words, okay? And you get the students to say the text again. I mean, make sure you don't erase content words, okay? Because those are the ones that take longer to memorize, okay? And the next time you drill it, again, you erase more words, and the process is repeated until the text disappears completely, okay, from the board, and the students drill it completed by heart. Fantastic activity because it has repetition, and but still is quite controlled, and you remove this support of the model little by little, okay? So at the end, students are able to say a piece of text quite naturally and fluently. Okay, so an example here. Sorry. So this is from Steve Jobs' really well-known speech from the Stanford University. And this is a little piece. So I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? Okay, so what you do is you get the students to repeat this, you drill this with the students, and then what you do is you remove some words. Always remember function words, okay? Not content words. So the students repeat it and drill it again, including, of course, the words you have removed. So in the next one, what you do is you remove some more words, and students again repeat the text with the words you have erased. So by the end, they will do this quite naturally, and they will pronounce this quite naturally because there is this repetition, there is this drilling and so on. And again, they will remember it, okay? Because what you are doing is you are drilling longer phrases, so this will go to their working memory. Okay, so activities to help students improve their fluency in class. And I will give you some of them. You might be familiar with them, but again, I'm sure you will find some of them useful. So for example, flash images. And what you do is you show an image containing a lot of detail for 1 or 2 seconds, and then you remove it. And students need to describe it to each other, okay? You see that this is relevant, for example, for part 2 of the exam. Chance, as I said, it's good, use them, okay? They will, even if they are, sometimes they are a bit silly, but maybe because of that as well, okay? Maybe because of that, they will remember the language they have in the chants more easily. Jigsaw stories. So what you do is you have 3 groups, for example, and you give each group a picture, and they have to talk about their pictures, and they have to put the story together, okay? So again, as you see, this is relevant for part 2 of the exam, because they need to talk about the pictures, and they need to reach an agreement and be able to build up the story together. Classic running dictations. 120, 90, 60, or 432. So this is, you give them a topic, and at the beginning you give them 2 minutes to talk about the topic, okay? Then the next time they do it, you just give them 90 seconds, and the next time they do it, you just give them 60 seconds, okay? To cover exactly the same information. So again, relevant for them to see what a minute feels like, okay? So that's something that is very important. And not only that, I mean, this is magic, really. I mean, repeating this and reducing the time makes them not only more fluent, but it makes them produce language that is more complex, and they improve their pronunciation. Again, I mean, every time you repeat a task, it will be better than the first time. Students learn a joke or a short story by heart, and then they tell it as fluently as possible. Again, they memorize that, they memorize the chunks, okay? And then they can use that in their speaking. Remember, the day of the exam, that's not the day to think too much about your language. Insert the word. Each student is given a card with words they need to insert while telling an anecdote. Then the students listening can try to guess the words they have included, okay? So again, a good way of making them use certain expressions. Role plays, always useful, okay? So they perform a conversation, and this can be useful for part 4, for example. Guess the line, similar to the one with insert the word, but in this case, what they do is they include a line when they tell the anecdote. Classics, alibi and green card. Students rehearse and perform a part of a well-known film or episode from a series, okay? So that's a great thing, because again, they imitate, and that's something very good to do, because again, then they will be able to use that in the exam day as it is. As we saw before, discussion cards, okay? So the teacher gives groups of students a set of cards with different statements. So we just saw it before. And discussion bingo as well, okay? So the activity we saw before. And like you said before, discussions and debates in any form help students improve fluency. All right, and this is it. So any questions? Okay. Okay, no questions. So this must have been pretty clear. Okay, these are the references I've used. Okay, so here you have the English profile, and a couple of very interesting books: how to teach speaking, and memory activities for language learning. Okay. And the next webinar, intelligibility factors with Carl McGee. Don't miss it. You will learn a lot of interesting things. So thanks again to Richmond for their support. And thank you very much for listening. And I hope we will see you in the next one, okay? So thanks a lot. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.